if President Trump wanted to make sure that the SEC would have a hard time in going after his Wall Street friends, it seems to me you would be the perfect SEC chair.
Clayton was Goldman Sachs' lawyer overseeing their part of the bailout. So he literally, in order to drain the swamp, went to get Goldman Sachs' bailout lawyer to head the SEC. This is somebody who has spent his life kind of battling with the SEC on behalf of major companies that have been charged with civil or criminal wrongdoing. Not much criminal wrongdoing because, as we know, the SEC doesn't really charge people with crimes, but when they have, often Jay Clayton is involved. What might be even more important than that is that he is one of the leading kind of legal theorists against what's known as the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. Now, Donald Trump doesn't know a whole lot about policy. He knows a lot about the FCPA. Donald Trump's empire appears to be based in some measure on a willingness for his hotel brand to look the other way when their partners in host countries are bribing officials, they're doing other unseemly things that the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act bans U.S. corporations from doing abroad. He has publicly said that the FCPA is bunk and ought to go away. What I would encourage everybody to do when you have time is, if you haven't already read it, go read the New Yorker article on the Trump Baku Hotel in Azerbaijan. It is shot through with corruption. We can call it alleged corruption since it hasn't gone to trial yet, and may never go to trial if somebody like Jay Clayton is the one whose job it would be to bring charges against it. But the level of corruption involved in this Trump Tower is just breathtaking to behold. It involves the Iranian Revolutionary Guard. It involves criminal underworld figures. It involves shadow banks. It involves money laundering. And all of it to build what looks like a bogus hotel kind of in the middle of nowhere in the city in Azerbaijan. It doesn't even look like it was built to serve a corporate purpose, but rather as kind of a vehicle through which to launder money. And it appears that they needed some type of branding to go along with it to make it appear legitimate. And they went and found Trump, and what the New Yorker suggests is that may be the thing that has allowed them to grow their empires, that they're willing to look the other way when other companies like a Hyatt or a Ritz or a Four Seasons, they do due diligence as is required by U.S. law. And if they find shady connections, if they find that, for instance, the Minister of Transportation, as was the case in Azerbaijan, is kind of the leading figure behind building this hotel, then you say, wait, you know what? Actually, we don't need to know a whole lot more. This is probably corrupt, and they step aside because they don't want to get charged under this act. So Donald Trump went ahead and did it anyway, got himself elected president. Now he's going to put the guy who wants to undermine the FCPA as the head of the SEC. It's quite a staggering turn of events.
Wesley Rose wants to know, why didn't the corporate media cover these issues in the election?
For one thing, business and conflict of interest stuff is difficult to do on cable TV when you have these 2-minute segments and you're spending the entire time just reacting to the last thing that one of the candidates said. It's expensive to send somebody to Azerbaijan. And to do that reporting. You know, there's a reason it took, and this was the reporter who did it for the New Yorker lived in Azerbaijan.
Who was Jay Clayton's longtime client while he worked on Wall Street for a quarter of a century? Goldman Sachs, you bet. You bet. In fact, he was their lawyer when Goldman Sachs sucked down billions of dollars in bailout money from U.S. taxpayers.
Goldman Sachs not only did they get a massive direct bailout, they got a backdoor massive bailout through AIG because they had so much counterparty risk with AIG that if AIG would have gone down, Goldman would have gone down. Instead, all of their trades with AIG were paid off at 100 cents on the dollar while they were worth something like a penny on the dollar, if not zero on the dollar. So while they're getting all this money, they need somebody to kind of oversee this process of raking in all this federal cash. And Jay Clayton was that man. he was the guy who oversaw the process of the bailout for Goldman Sachs.
Do you think Donald Trump knew this, or somebody just, kind of slipped Jay Clayton's name on his desk?
I think Donald Trump knew him from FCPA, the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. I think the reason Donald Trump picked him is because he knows that this is the most outspoken Wall Street lawyer against the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. That is one of the few issues that Donald Trump cares deeply about. He also cares about the alternative minimum tax because he's had to pay it. He knows about interest rates because he's been doing real estate transactions his whole life. There are things that he knows about because he deals with them. He's not an intellectual. He's not somebody that, reads journals or reads books or talks to people to kind of, understand his way through the world. But by doing, he learns. And by going into business in the Middle East and Brazil and in Azerbaijan and Indonesia and Russia and all over the country, he has learned about the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act by engaging in foreign corrupt practices. And so I think that he knew who Jay Clayton was through that. That's speculation, but that would be, if I had to put money on it, that's what I would guess.